What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Oh yeah. Gervonta Davis just saw something. Actually, I had heard about it on a channel that I subscribe to, Hatman Boxing out of the UK. So I want to make sure that I give credit to the channel that I saw this on originally. And then I went to Gervonta Davis's page and saw the Twitter page and saw the comments that were left by Eddie Hearn and Gervonta Davis. And pretty interesting stuff here. I will have it on the screen so you should be able to read it, but the two interactions makes it believe, or you can imply from what's read here, that Eddie Hearn is trying to sign Gervonta Davis. And hey, why wouldn't you want to sign Gervonta Davis? Gervonta Davis is one of the most talented boxers on the planet, in my opinion. He has his, he does some things on occasion that I'm not the happiest with, but hey, he fits, but he does not quite fit the profile of the people that Eddie Hearn said that he was trying to go after. So as you see on the screen, it said, I heard someone made a good offer for me. And Eddie Hearn says levels 100. Now, I find that very interesting. Now, if someone made an offer for him, that would mean more than likely it could be an offer to his current promoter, Floyd Mayweather Jr. And whether or not Floyd Mayweather Jr. wants to take, oh, and by the way, you see it's pound boxing with a bunch of big eyes, like, woo, right? So Eddie Hearn, it seems as if they're implying that Eddie Hearn is offered Gervonta Davis a lot of money. Now, it has to be through Floyd Mayweather, because if it's not through Floyd Mayweather and it winds up that Gervonta Davis signs with Eddie Hearn, then Eddie Hearn opens himself up to, Gervonta Davis could, not having seen the agreements, open himself up to lawsuits from Floyd Mayweather. But also Eddie Hearn could open himself up to lawsuits from a bunch of people. Al Heyman could be one, depends on what the damages suffered are, and Floyd Mayweather being another, for what we would call tortious interference. Tortious interference is where there's an established contractual relationship between two people and someone else interferes in that relationship and causes damage to the person who to the person that accuses them. So that is essentially, now what I heard in the video that Hatman Boxing had made, asked whether it's illegal in the United States to sign, to talk to somebody else. Well, it's not illegal in and of itself to talk to another boxer that's managed by someone, but it is a tort. A tort is like it's a civil thing. It's not an issue where somebody might wind up being incarcerated or something like that. It's more where somebody has suffered like breach of contract. Nobody's going to go to, no one's going to get that on their record, breach of contract, but and you don't have to be worried about, getting put away or anything like that. But when people suffer damages, you could be held liable for those damages. So tortious interference is what is the base, is pretty much what they would say. So, for example, where Bob Arum is going to be looking at the same type of issue with his recent signing of, or his recent attempt to sign or signing of David Benavidez to Top Rank, where the promoter, basically he went to the David Benavidez and told David Benavidez that he has a contract and the contract's weak and not enforceable, and therefore offered him something like $250,000 signing bonus to sign with Top Rank, and where the promoter for the previous or current, depending on how that turns out, promoter for David Benavidez is saying that he had given David Benavidez a $50,000 to cover his training expenses for the bout that he's about to pull out of to sign with Top Rank. So If it winds up that that contract is not enforced, that it is enforceable, then Bob Arum can be found liable for tortious interference. And I don't want to get overly technical with it, but pretty much these are the things that need to take place. You have to have a valid contract or economic expectation between the plaintiff, which means in this incident would be Floyd Mayweather or Al Heyman, right? For example, and a third person, the third person being matchroom boxing, right? Then the second element is, or part of the things that somebody would have to prove, is that the third party or matchroom had knowledge of the contract or the expectancy of the knowledge of the contract by the defendant. So you'd have to say that Al Heyman or that what's his name, Eddie Hearn, knew that there was a contract in place between two people, right? And then you have to have the third one is intent by Eddie Hearn to interfere in that contract. And then you have to not only have the intent to interfere with it, then you actually have to actually interfere with it. And then the interference is improper, and the plaintiff or the person in this instance, Floyd Mayweather or Al Heyman, have to suffer a damage, and they have to prove that damage. So that's pretty much what has to happen in order for Floyd Mayweather or Al Heyman to seek damages against Eddie Hearn. And that's slightly different than like the breach of contract, for where if Gervonta Davis just woke up and said, "Oh, you offered me all this money, I signed," and then he just stopped showing up and refuses to participate in agreements with or bouts that are set up by Mayweather, that would be breach of contract. So that's pretty much what it is, and the risk that Eddie Hearn runs. Now, when you look at this tweet, right, I think sometimes people try to get cute, right? But you hear you have him say, "I heard someone made a good offer for me," and then Eddie Hearn responds, "Levels, 100." Now, if you're sitting in front of a judge, or you're trying to make an argument, if it got to that point, somebody would say, "Look, what does levels mean?" Levels are they're higher and they're lower, which means, and Eddie Hearn is in the news talking about trying to criticizing the PBC, right? Criticizing Al Heyman, right? Criticizing and saying that he's on the hunt to sign boxers in the United States. So levels could be interpreted to mean he's directly communicating with Gervonta Davis and saying, "Look, yeah, I can give you a higher level deal, than the one you currently have. And yes, I'm confirming that I did make that offer. So yes, I do want you, Gervonta Davis." Now, seeing as this is an offer the offer could not be directly to Gervonta Davis, because all of these other things apply. There is a valid, unless there's something I don't know and we don't know, there's a valid contract between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Gervonta Davis. That's well established that in the media, that and the bouts that have taken place that Gervonta Davis has participated in, that Gervonta Davis is has a valid contractual relationship with Mayweather Promotions, and that he is promoted by him. The second was, is there knowledge of that contract by Eddie Hearn? Clearly, Eddie Hearn knows that he's represented by Floyd Mayweather Jr. That's common knowledge in the boxing industry. Gervonta Davis is the WBA Super 130-pound champion. Eddie Hearn that's not hard at all for that to be validated, that Eddie Hearn knows that. Intent to interfere with the contract. That's where you have here. Whether he's intending to interfere, they would have to prove. But this conversation, and if the offer was made to Gervonta Davis, and I mean, made, because you have to make the offer to Floyd Mayweather or Mayweather Promotions, right? And I also think that it could very well apply to managerial relationships and advisory relationships as well. So if, for example, Eddie Hearn met with Gervonta Davis and advised Gervonta Davis that, look, I would take this deal for you, I would sign you to this deal, but I don't want to work with Al Heyman as your manager and advisor. I need for you to get out of that a contract, but I'll put a little extra money on there to make sure that, you're taken care of. And I'll, trust me, And he goes about doing that. That would be an interference. That would be an interfering with a contractual relationship that he knows existed. So it could happen with the promoter. It could happen with the advisor or the manager. So that's pretty much, the risk that Eddie Hearn is running when he's dealing with Gervonta Davis versus a scenario where he's approaching, say, Daniel Jacobs, who did not have a promoter. However, if Eddie Hearn had suggested to Daniel Jacobs that he terminate agreements with Al Heyman, and then Daniel Jacobs terminates a valid contract with Al Heyman, then Al Heyman could claim that Eddie Hearn had tortuously interfered with that relationship. Do you know what I mean? So, and then there's the interference is improper, but then the last is the plaintiff has to suffer damages. So you actually have to have some type of damage inflicted on you. You either have to have lost some money, you had to have you could have, there's different theories of damages. There's reliance, there's money that you spent in reliance upon the fact that there was a valid contract. So for the example with David Benavidez and his promoter saying, look, I gave this guy $50,000 and I want that back. That's probably restitution. And then there's reliance, which is, and I'm kind of, what do you say? Trying to buff up my theories of the concept of damages. But there's reliance, there's restitution, there's expectation, there's punitive, and there's punitive. And so I doubt if they would get expectations. Expectation is we anticipated earning $50 million off of Gervonta Davis, and now we're not going to get that, right? That would be what you expected. The punitive is, look, this guy's done something so egregious that he needs to be punished for what he's done. Consequently, we want to have you, give us extra money to encourage, to let Eddie Hearn know that that's not something he should be doing, right? So there's that type of thing. But then there's reliance, the things that you've done relying upon Gervonta Davis's promises, right? Money that you could have spent in marketing, other deals that you passed up. All those things are what you have to prove in order to say, okay, yeah, they interfered with my contract, but he interfered with my contract, or in the case of Gervonta Davis, he breached my agreement. Okay, so what? What happened to you? What did you lose? So you have to prove that. But anyway, I wanted to talk about that because that was an issue that was brought up in the video that I made. It's not in and of itself illegal to make somebody an offer. However, it is, if you do cause somebody a damage, if somebody has a piece of business that they're conducting and you get in the middle of it and you break it up, right? Either by telling stories, like, for example, interference is improper. Improper interference could be just spreading a rumor that Floyd Mayweather Jr. is going bankrupt. And you might tell a story and say, hey, I heard that the PBC isn't going to be in business in 2 years. Do you really want to stay with them? Because, hey, man, my guys telling me that they're not going to be in business in 2 years. So, yeah, they got a contract with you. But look, trust me, I had my lawyers look over it, and they're telling me that the contract's not valid, right? So trust me on that. That that interference would probably be improper and wind up satisfying one of the elements to prove that somebody had tortiously interfered with your contractual relationship. And so I can't see anything on this face with Gervonta Davis and Floyd Mayweather where that happens, other than this little conversation seems to me to be Eddie Hearn trying to kind of be cute, right? Because he thinks he's being innocuous with it. Like, what does levels 100 mean? I know people that would have a field day with that little tweet right there. 100 means 100%. That's common vernacular for that's true. 100, right? Like, you could say, oh, that's cool. The dictionary definition of cool does not mean I agree. However, common nomenclature common nomenclature or slang, that means I agree. And that's not too difficult to get an argument to make. So when you say levels 100, like, look, you can get with a bigger company. Floyd Mayweather, yeah, Matchroom Boxing is on a different level than Mayweather Promotions. Yes, I, as a promoter, am bigger than your promoter right now. Absolutely. And I'm willing to give you this money, more money. And he's validating that somebody made a good offer for him. Now, how do you know that Floyd Mayweather is the one that told Gervonta Davis that? So, I think from what I can see here, that this is Eddie Hearn playing around the edges a little bit, but just in and of itself, this right here, just in and of itself, isn't tortious interference. But it could be used to prove one of the elements if Floyd Mayweather Jr. ever does wind up suffering some type of loss as a result of Gervonta Davis breaching his agreement. And the same thing could be true for Al Haymon, or I don't know who his personal managers are or his trainers are, any of that stuff. So, but anyway, man, I just find it funny. It's not surprising because, of course, everybody's going to want to sign Gervonta Davis. Everybody's going to want to sign Errol Spence Jr. Everybody's going to want to sign Mikey Garcia. They all want to sign all the PBC boxers. The irony of it, though, is that everybody the people that are trying to sign these boxers are acting as if the PBC is some great failure. Like they're doing a terrible job, but we want everything they have. And also the shift, you can see a big shift has taken place from the original way that people were trying to go after the PBC, which was to claim that they were promoters and say that they were trying to establish a monopoly and compete unfairly, those type of things. And switching from that to, oh, well, they don't have an established promotional agreement, so I'll just try to break everything up. The danger in that is that just because you're a promoter does not mean that you can interfere with the contractual relationships of a manager, or that you can tortiously interfere with the contractual relationships of a trainer. Now, what might keep those trainers from really pressing it is that they might not have, it's called deep pockets. They might not have enough money to try to actively pursue, or defend their interests. It might just not be worth it to them. But I guarantee if Al Haymon feels like Eddie Hearn is interfering or starting to cause him some issues, he has more than enough money to put Eddie Hearn in the hot seat. And Eddie Hearn's statements in public could very well be used as a means by which to prove that case if it ever comes to that. Now, while I don't think Eddie Hearn is a very honest person, and I've been very harsh in my criticisms of his tendency to be duplicitous, I don't think that he is without intelligence. So I would be very surprised if he really did overtly cross the line. Because I think he's been around long enough to do that. Now, Bob Arum, on the other hand, with David Benavidez, they don't care. They just figure that, hey, man, if it works, it works. And they have, they're very used to going to court. So if they take David Benavidez and David Benavidez gets stuck on the shelf because this other guy is going after them, I don't think that they would care too much. But anyway, that is what it is. And this might have been a little bit of a boring one, but I wanted to give that explanation. And with that, I'm out. Peace.